enumerated property to simplify expressions. First question, in parentheses x plus 10, and outside parentheses 3x. In this question, the term comes after the parentheses instead of before. Same steps, you can distribute by multiplying the term outside by each term inside. 3x times x would be 3x squared, and 3x times a positive 10 will be plus 30x. So our final answer, 3x squared plus 30x. Second question, negative 5y, and inside parentheses y plus 2. Multiplying the term outside by each term inside. This time we have a negative 5y, and we're multiplying by y, so that'll be negative 5y squared. And negative 5y times a positive 2 would be negative 10y. Next question, a to the fourth power, and inside parentheses a to the third power plus 2a to the second power. And again, multiplying the term outside by each term inside the parentheses. A to the fourth power times a to the third power. Again, if you remember from our previous sections, a to the fourth times a to the third will be adding the exponents. That'll be a to the seventh. And a to the fourth times a positive 2a squared. Positive 2 will stay the same. And a to the fourth times a squared, adding the exponents again, we'll have a to the 6th. So the final answer, a to the 7th plus 2a to the 6th. And last question for the section, 2x, and inside parentheses 6x to the third power minus x to the second power plus 5x. Again, the term outside 2x will multiply by each term on the inside of the parentheses, and this time there's 3 terms or 3 numbers to multiply. The first term, 2x times 6x to the third, we can first multiply the coefficients or numbers in front. 2 times 6 would be 12, and x times x to the third. Again, x we can put a 1 on, x to the first power times x to the third. Adding the exponents, we'll have x to the fourth. The second term, 2x times a negative x squared. 2 times a negative would be negative 2. And x times x squared, adding the exponents, will be x cubed. And last term, 2x times a positive 5x. 2 times 5 would be 10. And x times x would be x squared. So our final answer, 12x to the fourth power minus 2x to the third power plus 10x squared. Title of the first section today is Factoring, Greatest, common factor. In this section, we'll take problems and we'll factor the greatest common factor. First question is 2x plus 10. To factor the greatest common factor, you want to look at each term and divide out the biggest number or biggest factor that divides into both terms. Looking at the two numbers in both terms, we have a 2 and a 10. The biggest number that divides into 2 and also 10 would be 2. After finding the greatest common factor, we can open parentheses, and the number 2 will divide out of each term. Dividing a 2 from 2x, the 2 would cancel or factor out, and we'll be left with a single x. Bringing the plus sign over, factoring out a 2 or dividing by 2, 10 divided by 2 would be 5. So our first answer, 2, and inside parentheses, x plus 5. Second question, 3y to the second power minus 10y. Again, factoring out the greatest common factor, also known as the GCF. Looking at the two numbers in this question, we have a 3 and a 10. There is no number besides 1 that divides into 3 and 10, but both terms have the same variable, both terms have a y, so we can factor out where the GCF would be y. Open parentheses, taking a y out from the first term, the 3 would remain the same. Y squared means we have two y's, so if we factor or divide out a single y, we'll be left with 3y for the first term. Minus sign would stay the same. And again, taking out a y or factoring a y, we'll be left with 10. So our final answer would be y, and in parentheses, 3y minus 10. Next question, 4x to the third power plus 24x squared minus 12x. This time we have a trinomial with three terms or three numbers. The greatest common factor again will be the biggest number or biggest term that divides into all three. Looking at the numbers first, we have a 4, 24, and negative 12. 2 divides into each of these, but the biggest number that divides into 4, 24, and 12 would be 4. And again, the greatest common factor is the biggest number that divides into all three. All three terms also have a x. If you have the same variable in all the terms, we can factor out that variable also. So the greatest common factor would be 4x. Completing the question, we'll divide each term by 4x. The 4's again would divide or cancel. X to the third power is 3x's. If we divide or take out a x, we'll be left with x squared. Bringing down the plus sign, 24 divided by 4 would be 6. X squared, taking the x out, we'll be left with 6x. The minus sign again comes down, and 12 divided by 4 would be 3, with the x's canceling or dividing out. So our final answer would be 4x, and in parentheses, x squared plus 6x minus 3. And last question for the section, 6p to the 6th power plus 24p to the 5th power plus 18p to the 3rd power. Again, we have a trinomial with three numbers or three terms. To find the GCF or greatest common factor, looking at 6, 24, and 18, we want to find the biggest number that divides into all three. 2 divides into each of these. 3 also divides into each of these. But our biggest number that divides into all three would be 6. Each of them again have the same variable p, so we can take a p out. When all the terms have the same exponent, we want to take the lowest exponent, which is 3. So we can take 3 p's out or divide p to the third into each of them. So again, our greatest common factor is 6p to the 3rd power. And completing the question, we'll divide each one by 6p to the 3rd. The 6's again will cancel. Taking 3 p's out from p to the 6, we'll be left with p to the third power, plus 24 divided by 6 would be 4. P to the fifth divided by p to the third will be p squared, or p to the second power, plus 18 divided by 6 would be 3. And the p to the thirds would divide or cancel out. So our final answer, 6p to the third power, and inside parentheses, p to the third plus 4p squared plus 3. Title of the last section today is Simplify. Each expression and write in standard form. In this section, we'll simplify algebraic expressions and write in standard form, which, if you remember, standard form is ordered from highest exponents to lowest exponents. First question, and only question for this section, y, and in parentheses, y plus 3, minus 5y, and in parentheses, y minus 2. To simplify, we can first get rid of the parentheses. If you remember using distributive property, we can multiply the term outside times both the terms inside the parentheses. Since we have 2 parentheses, then we'll use the distributive property twice. Multiplying the first terms, y times y would be y squared, and y times a positive 3 would be positive 3y or plus 3y. Multiplying the second parentheses, we're going to multiply each term by negative 5y. So negative 5y times y, the negative 5 would stay the same, and y times y would be y squared. Negative 5 times a negative 2. Negative times a negative would be a positive. Multiplying the numbers, 5 times 2 would be 10, and the y would stay the same. Simplifying, we can combine like terms. When we're adding or subtracting like terms, we have to have the same variable and same exponent. So the y squareds we can put together. Y squared minus 5y squared would be the same as 1 minus 5, which would be negative 4. Subtracting 5 minus 1, the 5 is bigger, which would be negative 4, and the y squared would stay the same. And also the y's we can combine. 3y with a positive 10y. 3y plus 10y would be 13y. After simplifying, double check that our answer is in standard form. We have the highest exponents to the lowest exponents. So our final answer would be negative 4y squared plus 13y. Title of the first section today is Multiplying Using FOIL. In this section, we'll multiply terms using FOIL. FOIL is an acronym where each letter stands for a word. So we have 4 letters, F, O, I, and L. The F in FOIL stands for first. The O in FOIL stands for outside. The I in FOIL stands for inside. And the L in FOIL stands for last. When multiplying binomials, which we'll do in just a minute, we'll use the acronym FOIL. We'll multiply the first terms, then the outside terms, then the inside terms, and then the last terms. First question we'll look at, in parentheses, x plus 3, and a second set of parentheses, x plus 2. When multiplying 2 binomials, a binomial again has 2 terms or 2 numbers and letters times another binomial. We'll use the acronym FOIL. The F again stands for first. First means we'll multiply the first term in each parentheses. So we'll multiply x times x. X times x would be x squared. The O in FOIL stands for outside. That means we'll multiply the outside term on the far left times the outside term on the far right, which will be x times 2. X times 2 would be 2x, or positive 2x. The I in FOIL stands for inside. Inside means the middle 2 terms, so we'll multiply 3 times x. 3 times x would be a positive 3x. And L in FOIL stands for last. It means we'll multiply the last number in each parentheses. In this case, it would be 3 times 2, which would be a positive 6. Multiplying using FOIL has 4 steps, so we'll have 4 terms. In most cases, you'll be able to combine like terms, which will be the middle 2 terms, to get our final answer. So the answer to this question would be x squared. Combining 2x plus 3x would be a positive 5x, and the 6 would stay the same. So our final answer, after multiplying x squared plus 5x plus 6. Second question. In the first parentheses, y plus 4, and the second parentheses, y plus 5. And again, when we have 2 binomials, we'll multiply using FOIL. FOIL will basically take the first term y, multiply it by both terms in the parentheses, and we'll also take the 4 and multiply it by both terms in the parentheses. Following FOIL, the first terms, which again are the first numbers or letters in each of the 2 parentheses. Y times y would be y squared. The O in FOIL is outside. Going from the far left side to the far right side, we'll have y times 5, which is 5y. Multiplying the I in FOIL, the inside terms or middle terms. 4 times y would be 4y. And the L in FOIL, the last terms, 4 times 5, which would be 20. And again, using FOIL, we'll take the first term, multiply that twice, and we'll take the second term and multiply that twice. Again, when using FOIL, most of the time you'll be able to combine the middle 2 terms since they have the same variable and same exponent. So rewriting our answer, y squared would stay the same. 5y plus 4y would be 9y. And 20 would stay the same. So our final answer would be y squared plus 9y plus 20. And last question for this section. In parentheses, the first parentheses is a plus 3, and the second parentheses a minus 5. And again, multiplying by FOIL, we'll have 4 steps to get the correct answer. The first variable for f would be a times a. A times a would be a squared. Multiplying the outside terms, which again will be the far left all the way over to the far right. a times a negative 5 this time. A times a negative 5 would be negative 5a. And multiplying the inside terms, 3 times a would be 3a. And multiplying the last terms, 3 times a negative 5 would be negative 15. And again, when using FOIL, most of the time the middle two terms will be like terms, and you'll be able to combine those for your final answer. A squared would stay the same. Negative 5a plus 3a. Different signs, negative and positive, will end up subtracting. 5 minus 2, 5 minus 3 would be 2. The 5 is bigger, so it'll be a negative 2a. Minus 15 would stay the same. So our final answer after multiplying using FOIL, a squared minus 2a minus 15. Title of the last section today is More FOIL Questions. In this section, we'll continue to use FOIL to multiply out binomials. First question and first parentheses, 5a plus 2 times 6a minus 1. And again, we'll use FOIL, the acronym, to multiply two binomials where you have two numbers or two terms in each set of parentheses. Multiplying the first terms in each parentheses, 5a times 6a. Multiplying the numbers first, 5 times 6 would be 30, and a times a would be a squared. So 5a times 6a would be 30a squared. Multiplying the last terms, the far left side to the far right side, 5a times a negative 1. Multiplying by a negative 1 would just make it negative 5a. Multiplying the inside or middle terms, 2 times 6a. 2 times 6 would be 12, and the a would stay on to make it 12a. And multiplying the last numbers in each parentheses, positive 2 times a negative 1. When you multiply one negative, it would stay negative for negative 2. And again, when multiplying by FOIL, most of the time the middle two terms will be like terms. We can combine those for our final answer, which would be 30a squared. Negative 5a plus 12a will be the same as 12 minus 5, which would be a positive 7a minus 2. So our final answer, 30a squared plus 7a minus 2. And last question for the section. First parentheses is 3x minus 7. And second parentheses is 2x minus 5. Multiplying the first terms again, 3x times 2x. 3 times 2 would be 6. And x times x would be x squared. Multiplying the far left times the far right, the outside terms, 3x times a negative 5. 3 times a negative 5 would be negative 15, and the x will leave on for negative 15x. Multiplying the inside or middle terms, negative 7 times 2x. Negative 7 times 2 would be negative 14, and again leaving the x on, negative 14x. And the last terms, last numbers in each parentheses, negative 7 times negative 5. Multiplying a negative times a negative would be a positive, and 7 times 5 would be 35. Combining the like terms again, which are usually the middle two terms, 6x squared stays the same. minus 15x minus 14x. If you have these same signs, both minus, we can add the terms and leave it as a minus or negative. 15 plus 14 will be 29. So negative 15x minus 14x would be negative 29x plus 35. So our final answer, 6x squared minus 29x plus 35. Title of the first section today is multiplying using FOIL. In this section, we'll continue to multiply problems using FOIL, which again stands for first, outside, inside, last. First question we'll look at, in parentheses, x plus 2, and outside parentheses to the second power. This question has one parentheses raised to the second power. We'll multiply using FOIL. When we have a second power outside, it means we have the same parentheses twice. So x plus 2 to the second power means we'll have x plus 2 times the same parentheses x plus 2. The 2 again does not distribute inside the parentheses. The 2 means you have the same parentheses twice. Once we write the same parentheses twice, now we can multiply using FOIL. Again, taking the first term, multiplying it by the first term in each parentheses. X times x would be x squared. The O in FOIL, the outside, going from the far left to the far right. X times 2 would be 2x. Multiplying the inside terms, or middle terms, 2 times x would also be 2x. And multiplying the last number in each parentheses, 2 times 2, which would be 4. Again, multiplying using FOIL basically takes the first term, multiplying that twice, and takes the second term, multiplying that twice. Whenever you have the same parentheses twice, the middle two terms will match up and be the same term, and we'll be able to combine like terms. So our final answer would be x squared. 2x plus 2x would be 4x, and plus 4 would stay the same. So our final answer, x squared plus 4x plus 4. Second question, in parentheses y plus 3, and outside parentheses to the second power. Again, when we have a parentheses raised to the second power, the 2 does not distribute to the inside. The 2 exponent means we have the same parentheses twice. So y plus 3 times itself, y plus 3. Multiplying the first terms again, y times y would be y squared. Multiplying the far left times the far right for the outside terms, y times 3 would be positive 3y. Multiplying the inside terms, or two middle terms, 3 times y would again be 3y. And multiplying the last terms, or last two numbers in each parentheses, 3 times 3, which would be 9. And again, when you have the one parentheses squared, or the same parentheses written twice, the middle terms will always match up, and you'll be able to combine like terms. So our final answer, y squared, adding 3y plus 3y would be 6y, and adding the 9, our final answer would be y squared plus 6y plus 9. And last question for the section. Inside parentheses, a minus 4